just because they didn't hit you doesn't mean they're not abusive. We have reached a point in society where we, of course, talk down to physical abuse, except we don't actually call it out. Chris Brown's comeback, anybody? But we've also reached this point where we don't even recognize, or we just assume someone is lying when they talk about non-physical abuse. We get into this concept of, oh, if it was just bad, you should have just left. Instead of recognizing that even though it wasn't physical, there is still manipulation and a lot of physical and mental trauma that happens along with non-physical abuse. So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you a handful of different kinds of non-physical abuse. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but if you're anything like me, you have spent far too long in abusive relationships without even recognizing that what they're doing is abuse. Just as a trigger warning, I am going to be talking about different forms of abuse, and I don't want anyone to get triggered or down into a spiral. If you think that this is something that you can't quite hear or something that isn't going to be beneficial to you, feel free to save it and come back later when you're in a better mental space. Really quick, before I get started, if this is your first time hanging out, welcome. My name is Karleigh Saunders, and I'm a confidence and abuse recovery coach. I'm here to help you not only heal from the abuse that you endured, but to build the skill of confidence you can step into the life of independence and freedom that you deserve. So before I get into the different forms of non-physical abuse, I want to say outright that I am in no way taking away from the damage that physical abuse can cause. As someone who has been a victim of physical and non-physical abuse, I feel confident in saying that they are both horrible, terrible, and that's why I do what I do. Not only to help survivors, but also to provide prevention education so we can finally be armed with the knowledge to get out before things escalate and to notice the signs for when our friends desperately need our help. But if you are someone who has experienced physical abuse, please know that I am in no way saying that what you went through didn't happen. But what I do want to make people realize is that just because someone didn't leave a physical bruise on you does not mean that they are not abusive. A lot of the times there are all sorts of different forms of abuse that happen that we see as normal or are even glorified in most media. With that being said, let's get into the first form of non-physical abuse I'm going to be talking about today: verbal abuse. I really hate how downplayed verbal abuse is. In movies, books, TV shows, we are taught that it's just a joke, or that by having an actual reaction to something that someone is saying, to someone's abuse towards us, that we're overreacting. However, this can cause major trauma within the brain. I've done an entire video about how abuse changes your brain, which you can check out here. Make sure that you watch that video. It's extremely helpful and tells you just how abuse, whether physical or non-physical, actually changes the way your brain functions. So verbal abuse is actually an umbrella for its own category of abuse. Verbal abuse can clearly be someone screaming at you and yelling in your face, but it can also be things like gaslighting and other forms of manipulation. This can be someone saying things like, oh, well, it doesn't look that great on you, but sure, go ahead and wear it. Oh my God, why are you so stupid? Things like that that don't necessarily seem like it's that big a deal are a big deal, because those things, basically what they're using is they may not be using their fists, but they are using their mouths as their weapon of choice. And that is how they're choosing to abuse you. Verbal abuse is when someone does just that. They use their voice as a way of manipulation and gaslighting. So again, they may not leave a physical bruise on you, but if they are going after you verbally, yes, it is abuse. Second form of abuse I want to touch on is spiritual abuse. Spiritual abuse is when someone uses a religion or belief system against you to get you to do what they want you to do. I, for one, am saying this very carefully because as a believer myself, I believe in God. Whatever you believe in or don't believe in, that's totally your choice, your prerogative. But this is coming from someone who has been spiritually abused. I'm just sharing what I know, and I want to make sure that this does not get taken out of context. It breaks my heart as someone who believes in God to see so many people use his name to spiritually abuse others. For example, something that has been used against me is, I'm the man, you're the woman, you submit to me. The Bible says that I get to control you, so it doesn't matter whether or not you want it, get down and take it. It doesn't matter what you think, I'm the man and you have to take whatever abuse I dish out to you. There are definitely other ways and other uses of spiritual abuse out there, but those are ones that I have personally witnessed myself used against others, as well as me personally. And as we continue on, you're going to see that there's a lot of these different forms of non-physical abuse. There's not clear categories that they're all separately blocked away in. They all have overlap. Since a lot of these things like spiritual abuse, they have to use their words to manipulate you, that can also be a form of verbal abuse and gaslighting. So while I'm sharing these different types, it's not that they're all in their own separate sections. I just want to make sure that you become aware of what's going on around you. So then that way you can recognize it when it happens. Financial abuse. This is when they take away your ability to access the finances, and so you become completely dependent upon them. This can also play a part in a physically abusive relationship as well. Because if the abuser knows that you can't go anywhere because you don't have access to the money, they're going to feel like they have even more power over you. And so if you don't feel like you can survive outside of that relationship, if you don't feel like you can fiscally go and live out on your own, you're more apt to stay. Financial abuse is anytime money is used against you. Either it's taking away your ability to access finances, or someone saying that you're not going to get X until you do Y. Another form of abuse is isolation abuse. This could come in two different forms. This is where, on one hand, the abuser will tell you that your family is the problem, that your friends are the problem, that they're talking bad about you behind your back. They're doing anything they can to get you to cut contact with them. The other side of isolation abuse is when they go to your friends and family and tell them how horrible you are. And they get into their head, so they don't even want to reach out to you because they are seen as the victim and you are seen as the problem. And then there's reactive abuse. This is something that's really difficult to talk about, only because there's no true, safe way to respond to it. Reactive abuse is when someone pokes and prods at you, doing just enough to push your buttons until you finally lash out and they can say, I told you she was crazy. I told you that they were a problem. I told you he was going to do this to me. I said it. Look at this. Why are you yelling at me? I wasn't yelling at you. Why do you always act like this? Are you crazy? Is this a problem? Reactive abuse is when someone knows just what to say. And so on the outside, it doesn't look like they did anything and you look like the problem. This could be done behind closed doors in order to gaslight you into thinking that you are the problem. Or this could also be done in public settings to where they can get you to explode in public. And again, you're seen as the problem and they are seen as the victim. Gaslighting is a really big problem under this umbrella as well. And it definitely plays a part in every single one of these. I also did a video on gaslighting, which I will link to here in the info card. Make sure you go and check that out and watch it, because gaslighting is one of the most pervasive forms of manipulation and abuse that I have ever seen. And knowing what gaslighting is and recognizing when it's happening and when we're doing it to ourselves can be one of the most powerful ways that we can arm ourselves against abusers. The reason I want to bring all of this up is because I don't want you to wait for a bruise before you leave. I hear from women all the time going, oh my gosh, I wish he would just hit me so I could leave. I wish he would just hurt me so I'd have an excuse to leave. I wish they would just do something physical so people would believe me. And it really breaks my heart that we've gotten to this point. It really, really kills me, because there's so many of us, myself included. I was in that kind of relationship as well on more than one occasion, where if it wasn't physical, people didn't take it seriously. And heck, a lot of the times people still don't take it seriously. That's why it is so important for us to recognize it and see it. And another thing that I want to touch on too is that if you are someone who doesn't want to leave because they're not physical, chances are it's going to become physical at some point. Something that I've experienced more than one occasion is it starts out with one of these forms of non-physical abuse and then escalates to the physical. I'm not saying that if it never escalates that it's fine to stay. But what I am saying is that I don't want you to wait for a bruise before you finally get out. Please, please, please do not stay in these situations. You deserve more and you deserve better. If you are needing resources, if you don't know what the first step is to leave, if you need someone to talk to, please know that I am always here for you. Comment below, or if you want to remain anonymous and you want to keep it private, send me a DM over on Instagram at karleigh.lynn. I answer all of my DMs myself, and I am here to help provide resources for you. And if you need, I can help you find resources and support in your area for you to reach out to help you get out of these situations. Whether you believe it or not, you deserve more. And there is so much more to life than living in fear. It's time to put your safety first, whether that's your physical safety, your spiritual safety, mental safety, it doesn't matter. Anytime that your safety is compromised, regardless of what umbrella it falls under, it's time to get out and get away. If you have any questions, please make sure to comment below or send me a DM over on Instagram. I'm going to make sure I have all of that linked in the show description, as well as other resources for you to check out as well. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and never forget that you are strong, you are capable, you are intelligent, and boo, you are so freaking worthy.